been a lot of changes. A lot of this stuff is coming into the public. You know, I said that in February when I came out, that this is called the Unveiling, that the corruption, by the end of 2016, something was going to happen that was going to bring the corruption into public view. Well, that something began to happen. Then there's sub-phases of phase one. There's basically 3 phases of the unveiling: the corruption, the legal system connected to a spiritual enslavement system, and then how that goes into these secret societies, and basically religious control and cult control, mind control basically has to be exposed as something that's been going on and something that's been happening, and that is basically the beginning of uncovering a lot of other things that have been going on. And that's basically phase one, and it pretty much, there goes the wind. I should have picked a sturdier tree. It's phase 1, 2, and 3. The main idea is that people don't have the knowledge of what's going on, and for that reason, in order to get to the more complicated technological and ultimately unveiling spiritual, universal or cosmic truths related to intelligence, consciousness, the soul, and then the branch from World War II and the underground bases, the development of technology, brain drain. They took up all the scientists or all the people that were intelligent enough to figure out what was going on, and parallel dimensions, basically the format, the structure of the universe. First, the lead up to that, to these discoveries, as well as how that basically ultimately changed everything, because from our perspective, and even the people that were involved, this information has always been here on these timelines, meaning from their families, from their societies, they were always involved. And excuse the branch in the way, you can see the thorns, it's nice. It's like, I don't know what that means. Anyway. So, it's like it's cutting me. I don't like it. Symbolically, I don't want to hurt it. I don't know what I'm doing. So it's really confusing and weird. Maybe I'll have a crown. Thorn crown. Crown of thorns. Oh, great. Everything's got to be weird today. I'm sorry. Enjoy the spontaneity while it lasts. Alright, so phase one then is, for the most part, the corruption, because you got to think how you have a group of people that have no idea about any of this. They've just been living life. Okay, so how do you break them into the fact that these things have been happening, and this is like symbolically, it's like, I don't know, in my mouth, in my neck, in my head. Anyway, I'm alright with nature, so we'll see how it affects me symbolically. So how do you break them into the fact of these simulation technology, the connection between a cosmic simulator or a cosmic simulation or universal simulation, which is connected to a way of understanding the universe, and consciousness and time? That time basically is an illusion. You don't have a linearity of time where one thing happens and the other thing happens. You have a starting point where everything is coded into the universe and it already all exists, and consciousness moves down that line, and time doesn't actually go anywhere. There's nothing happening. It's our perception that's changing. Excuse me. And so it's like one of those perceptual illusions, like a Gestalt perceptual illusion, where like a Necker cube. I'm writing a post on this. You have a Necker cube, which is one of those cubes drawn with just the lines, the outer lines, and the it's see-through basically, and it's two-dimensional. And so if you, depending on which way you look at it, and it's not even which way, because it's not a physical thing, it's perceptually which way your mind functions. The back of the cube could be facing this way, or the back could be facing the other way, and the front's facing you that way. And it switches whichever way you kind of think, whatever way you glance at it. There's another one, which is the ballerina performing, I can't think of the word, when they twirl on their toes, and it's a shadow, a silhouette, and so she's spinning, and depending on how you perceive, because it's a ambiguity, it's basically ambiguity of differential as far as depth perception, and so she could be spinning both either direction. It doesn't really matter. And eventually, if you catch it, it'll be spinning both the direction where she goes one way and comes back like that. And that's really, doing that. These exercises are kind of like training your mind to deal with perceptions and try and distinguish between one or the other, or discovering what is simply perception and what is concrete reality, because concrete reality is not as easy to determine when you take in all these perceptual illusions. And that's the way psychology works. Psychology 101 kind of is based upon that a lot. It's about it's about the development from infancy into adulthood and the stages we go to, and how that leads up to, and at least in Maslow's hierarchy, which is one of the widely accepted approaches, if you will. I guess that's what it's actually called. Viewpoints on psychological fulfillment. And so one interesting thing about that is at the top of the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is that when one is fulfilled of their needs, they don't go and make more needs. They stop desiring and seeking to fulfill themselves and begin to focus on transferring that to others and teaching others and allowing others to learn in the same way and fulfilling their own needs. That is the mark of psychological fulfillment. And so it goes into adulthood, and then it also shows how at certain layers of development, or any layer where there is a delay or distortion or a psychological problem where it's related to trauma, or basically a delay of development, lack of progress, then the next stage of development, self-image, and a tool, if you will, an aspect of the personality, confidence, independence, knowledge of the self, and as far as some are like at the age of 12, one begins to project their ego out again, to the point where now they wonder, what if I was like this person? They can see from another person's perspective. What if, and then they can abstract about time, as far as, what if I made this decision differently and life was different? And now they're in their mind focused on a world that doesn't exist. It only exists in their mind. So it's not a learned trait, it's a developed trait, which is kind of complex to have beings, able to do that. And so, say there's a lack of confidence about where one is, then they'll not want to do that. They'll reduce their awareness of reality down to just a narrow band, or they'll lose confidence. And this begins at infancy, basically with the mother attachment and being able to attach to other individuals, and then being able to be independent. And so there's a whole bunch of studies with that. It has a lot to do with these projects and experiments, as far as how to strengthen a person and how to as quickly as possible, accelerate through these levels to get to a type of highest level you could imagine, and in that way be prepared for challenges that are basically not mundane and not naturally, if you will, a part of this world and a part of what humanity has not evolved, but spiritually evolved or adapted in our lives to handle. Because say, a type of cosmic war breaks out, okay, well, how are people going to handle that? And so they're partially doing this in order to see how people will handle that. And so it's not going to break. And there's a whole bunch of other reasons from there, but all this has to be taken into account in order to understand what happened. That's why it's also a big learning experience for the whole world. People aren't going to really know what to, how to interpret it, but those that do, and everyone that really comes to terms with this, is going to learn from it either way, because you can't do anything else. And so then the other aspect of the infancy into development and adulthood, as well as trauma and the delay, and what happens when there's a delay, and then you get into these psychosis and psychological distortions, personality disorders, dissociative identity, multiple personality disorder, these phobias and fetishes, sexual fetishes, all these types of branches from where the person would develop originally and into where they become. And it's a distorted version of themselves. And that also has to do a lot with this causal reference theory, if you will, this way of understanding time in the universe in terms of causality and how whenever we branch off into another reality, determined or related to decisions we make that aren't sourced from within, that's another being controlling us and basically taking our energy. And so they took this to the max and found basically there's like a cosmic parasite that lives based upon creating and, in a way, deceiving, imposter, spirit, tricking people into causally leaving room and leading themselves or leading that person into a reality that merges, or at least connects with a far-off foreign intelligence reality where this being is just sitting there kind of drawing people in hyperspace, if you will, so that people kind of create it as part of the mind virus, the time virus. It's very confusing, but once you look at how the universe works, and that we're basically doing that anyway, we just have a natural blueprint related to the soul where we're on a path towards spiritual evolution. We're not going to like transform or anything, but we become a different person, or we become more of ourselves, it's unveiling the soul. And so the fear, the personality, the way you see existence, and that actually has a temporal modulation effect on time and our perception of the moment and our perception of life itself. And so we're doing this anyway with this causal reference thing. This is just something that it's like a parasite within that higher spectrum, within that existence. I really hope this isn't getting ruined by the wind. I'll try and clean it up anyway if it does. And so, so basically, the development, infancy, the psychosis, and then the other part of psychology 101 is, for the most part, I kind of ran through it, is besides interpreting symbolism and things like that in society, reality, advertising, and connecting that to the subconscious, memes and things like that. But the other aspect is the perceptual qualities, or more so the perceptual nature of the mind. That reality is more or less composed of perceptions, which are stimuli, raw data, brought up through the senses, organized by areas of the brain. Excuse me for just like jumbling up all the complicated processes of neurology that could be used to explain the synthesis of perception, but they turn that raw data into a kind of subjective experience, which more or less is used to create a subjective, neurologically generated, in that way, virtual reality. And we all connect to this virtual reality in our mind, and then we connect to that in society, and therefore we, as social beings, exist in an interconnected or collective virtual reality that's created through perception, which is very, very interesting. Because you can imagine a dog's running around, he's not in the reality that we're in, so who's in the real reality? We would say us because we're smarter. Okay, well, the Gestalt thing about Gestalt perceptions is that there are tricks that these psychologists worked out, and neurologists even, where it's like a mind game, if you will. It's like a labyrinth. The mind, everything is basically developed in the mind. There's a temporal delay between sensation being actually initiated and the perception of that sensation, meaning what we actually perceive is what the brain's telling us. It's not actually what's happening, and it's not to the degree where it's, of course, the nerves here go and then the neurons fire. No, the nerve goes or senses stimuli, the nerves fire, if you will, and then the neurons fire, and then they do like an exchange of information, and it creates a mirror image of one part of the brain that's sensing it in another part, and we sense the mirror image, meaning we go into a virtual environment, a virtual box, like a computer system in our heads, and that's where everything is running. We're not actually plugged into the direct feed from the like a live update system, or like we're not plugged into the internet, if you will. It's a virtual environment inside of an operating system that is connected to the actual internet or this world. So it's really weird. It's like the brain's doing something here that we're not really aware of without going through all this. And so they figured out a lot about this, and in a really beautiful way. As well, sometimes horrifying, but life is sometimes horrifying. That's how it works. And so all these perceptual systems into determining kind of how consciousness works. Even then, it goes directly into holography, where the light, which you could call light, which is basically a form of neurochemistry, or basically biochemistry in the mind, or the brain actually, and the mind, but the mind is outside the brain. It's an electromagnetic field. Okay, that functions like a holographic database, basically. It functions like a hologram. And that's why brains can repair. Personality is in a way transient from one portion or another, and it can't really be defined definitively, especially as far as where consciousness is outlined, or what parts are responsible for it, especially the way your components of the body line up to create a whole experience, if you will. So there's a connection of holography there, and that goes directly into physics and theoretical physics and a lot of stuff like that. And so we kind of need to jump on this stuff, and a lot of it, I'll tell you, is part of the way ultimately, like, it leads up to the fact that they figure out this place is created. That's how it works. It's nothing just like popped up. That is not even an experience. It's not even an explanation. It's not even trying. Whoever says that is not trying to explain. And so this place was created, and our bodies basically were. But then it gets to why and how and what's going on. And so phase one touches. Well, it doesn't touch a lot of this, but those who are prepared to understand and know those things will be prepared to understand phase one, and as well. It comes down a lot to the legal system, how it's basically mirroring a spiritual enslavement system, harboring knowledge and hiding the truth under a series of wild perceptual systems, illusions, through the language and etymology, and just like outlining a world which is not really what's going on here. For instance, the stuff that they teach us and tell us in the background, they specifically tell their people, this is the lie that we tell to everyone. It's not like, well, we think this is what it is, but we really don't know. And they say, this is the lie that we tell other people. That's how it works. And so, and everybody can kind of tell that's going on. You don't have to believe me just because. And don't believe anything I say. Research it, or I obviously research everything. Why wouldn't you? And so it goes kind of from there into the corruption system, how it's prevailed since very early on, and why that goes into phase 3 and time and stuff like that, and consciousness. But phase 1 goes from there into the corruption, the exposure of corruption, the education, judicial, monetary, pharmaceutical, even agricultural, and like the food industry, and environmental industry, archaeological, scientific, all this stuff, all these industries, these groups basically coveting knowledge and telling lies to people. And from there, that goes into science and technology as far as where we're actually at in regards to celebrity cloning, because this ties into the basic secret operations. You kind of go like MK Ultra, Artichoke and Bluebird, and Project Monarch, and into Mockingbird. MK Ultra is drugging, trauma-based mind control, as far as really not even trauma-based mind control, but part of that, and then part kind of exploration of the consciousness of the mind, the subconsciousness of these other areas of existence. And Monarch is absolute trauma-based mind control, comes from these Monarch bloodline families, these elite bloodlines. And Artichoke, and I think Bluebird was where MK Ultra, they picked up off of MK Ultra, because when something gets closed down, they just change names. So when people figure out years later, oh, MK Ultra was going on, now they go back and say, oh, it was closed in the 70s, but in reality they just changed name and went to something else. And so then Mockingbird is how to control the population through media influence, and how media influence through celebrities and key figures can control basically the population, the minds of people, to control, ultimately the big whoop is the future, to control what's going to happen, because people program the future, program the collective mind, program this field of energy around the earth to guide this whole environment, this whole society into where we're going and what's going on. And they knew that and knew it, and that's where all this ties in. I'll just, give them benefit of the doubt. Part of this is because without some type of control system, everybody just like fights each other, because we're all different species, honestly. We're all different beings. That's how it works. And everyone doesn't really have a collective system for communication and for integration. So at that point, where we would go is like directly into a brick wall as a species. And as well, that's given them a big benefit of the doubt, because there's ways that can be could have been used to integrate this. However, they've been avoided because of these secret aspects of control, mind control, and basic power struggles. And so from there into the celebrity cloning ideas of this, the aspect, and how that relates to these underground bases and these secret projects, these unacknowledged special access programs. And that's basically the first of it. But the idea of me bringing this is that it hinges on the exposure of the corruption, as well as the question of advanced technology and cosmic intelligences. That's basically the corruption, advanced technology, cosmic intelligences. I don't want to say UFO and aliens, because technically, if you don't know what you're talking about, you could be looking directly at an agenda, you know, by talking about those issues. And so, which is basically mind control agenda. So, you know, make up your own mind about these things, and the whole idea behind that agenda is so you don't make up your own mind, you just believe what somebody tells you. And so, you know, that's a spiritual enslavement, and it's reality entrainment. And so those three are basically the basics of the first one. This kind of went off completely. I haven't even started a list yet, but we'll see where this goes. It's kind of interesting. And then you know, phase 2 is, I'll go right into advanced technology. That's where it is, and I kind of want to talk about the reality of the soul and electromagnetics and electrogravitics and the basically the hidden technologies. And that's actually that's phase 2. How because basically you look at it like phase 1, corruption, celebrity cloning, the kind of key issues on the mind control, trauma-based mind control, this mass mind control system. And then you look at how, and that, you got to think every level is going to blow somebody's mind, everybody's minds, because that's the truth. Is we've been in a society where it's been hidden, so that's the nature of what's going to go on and what is going on. And so you look at phase 2, it's the same thing. Only each one is modeled differently, and so this one's not going to be about the corruption. It's about how far the technology goes, and it blow your mind. But it's also not just like they made up some stuff or invented some technology that does things. It's like this shows us who we are. Each layer shows us in history and the society, all the way into phase 3, where it leads into the origins of humanity, the universe, the cosmic intelligence, and what it all really means, and it wraps up and ties together. And so with phase 2, in the advanced technology, basically how electrogravitics work, how these scalar mind control systems work, how energy can be transferred from a transmitter to a receiver and power a city in the same way, and that'd be kind of very high powered, but in the same way energy can come from a transmitter to a mind and influence or modulate the perceptions, the thoughts that are occurring in somebody's mind or emitting. And so it's all about waves. It's all about, honestly, Tesla said it's all about frequency, energy, and vibration. I think that's the order. I usually mix up the orders of things. And so basically it's all about waves. This is like a hard one as well. I'm writing a post on this too. I think I mentioned the same post before about how consciousness is kind of like a wave function. It's a process, or it's kind of like a collective illusion. Okay, you have an ocean, and the ocean has a swell or a wave. I mean, the wave is different because it picks it up. That's when it picks it up. But a swell, which is a wave, basically. It looks like a sine wave, that kind of wave. They both do it, but the other wave is a crash, so it has a different format, a different function. And so it's kind of like a scalar wave, how they crash. Well, a wave in water crashes, well, it begins to carry the water with it and throw it. A scalar wave makes vibrations, but then when they clap or crash together, it actually throws energy. It's the same concept. And so, but you have a ocean, flat line of water. Think of one of those testing facilities where they have like these wave pools and all types of stuff like that. Really cool stuff. And you have like a clear tank or whatever, and you have the wave going across the water. Now, what is in motion? Cows doing aerobics. What is in motion from A to B? Don't say the water, because that's not. I mean, you could put dye and you could put bobbers or whatever's, floaters, and they stay in the same spot. They just go up and down. They don't go from A to B. They don't go horizontal. There's no horizontal motion there. And the water molecules are basically the same thing. They just go up and down. While the wave itself, in the in-between compressions, basically, the wave of energy is what is moving from side to side. So now, is energy material? Does it have mass? It has force, but it doesn't have mass. Okay, so that there's nothing moving. Nothing is actually happening. There's an interrelation between the molecules which we are perceiving as a unified force that moves throughout. So in the same way, consciousness is a collection of these forces from like an innumerable amount of individual units, from neurons to cells to energy system charges, basically charge displacements. And the end result, the collective result of all these differences, we organize into a contrast in motion in an abstract plane, relative but abstract to the layer of the, in this case, neurochemistry or electromagnetic plane or medium that all this is happening. And through that we perceive change, and that change that we perceive, just like the wave in water that doesn't actually exist, well, that's consciousness. It's an immaterial, perceptual, subjective experience of what is taking place. In other words, you need a conscious observer aspect in order to determine that wave actually moving. Say you have a computer system, okay, well, you can detect numbers are increasing and then decreasing values when so-and-so energy is moving from here to there, but you need a person to look at that and say, oh, that's a wave, okay, and to actually perceive it. You can have a system call it that, but it's not going to know what's going on. So in the same way, consciousness, you need a soul, if you will, in the brain, in the body, to have all these systems going on, because the same thing is like a wave for each firing neuron, each cell, each neurochemical process, okay, and each neurochemical process of these peptides and neurochemicals, I can't think of the proper word for them, there's, I think, thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions of them at each time. Each time there's a firing, a thought, a release from the synapses across the gap to other synapses, or from the dendrites to the synapses. I'm a little rusty on my neurochemistry biology. That's biology. That's biology 101. That or 102, or what would it be, like 210 or something? 2020. And so there's nothing about any of this that is just a ball bumps into another ball and you're like, I haven't thought. It's just a wave crashing into foam, rising and collecting and sizzling back down, and then the process repeats itself. And that happens thousands of times, if not thousands of times a second, and each one of those collecting into a collective singular experience. That's us going, oh, the room, a tree, wind, okay? It's all stimuli dependent, until this is an interesting connection with neurology and psychology. Stimuli dependent, then what happens when you close the stimuli out and you move into a subjective state where only you are experiencing what subjective stimuli you are also creating, and you have a feedback loop. That's when you go into another environment that is basically, it's like you're in a virtual environment in your mind, and in that virtual environment that's not actually connected to the world. Okay, imagine you shut off the internet, and now you're literally just inside that operating system messing around in a virtual simulator. Okay, well, that weird stuff begins to happen at that point. You can basically create anything. You kind of do these experiments inside your mind, and the idea is once you do those experiments, you're actually connecting to a world that exists abstract or independent of this world, yet the experiments can coincide, where you can find the truth of reality in your mind, even though they're two different worlds, and it makes it look like they are actually the same world. And it's the same with the superpowered computer systems. Technically they're superpowered. They're supercomputer systems where they can determine projected realities, holographic simulations based upon artificial neurons, all the way down to you get basically artificial neurochemistry. And when they run those, they can basically initiate changes in the real world. Very strange how that works. That's kind of like the bottom of phase 2, because once you do that, then you get into, phase 3, where what is this world? How has this technology influenced this world? What is really going on? And it begins to go, if you think the last parts were crazy, well, I'm telling you, phase 3, it's off the charts. There's no way of describing it. And this is pretty much how they break it down to an individual person into like an awakening, where they break all of these things down. That's the actual event of that. That's the information therein. And so back to phase 2, where you have that, so consciousness as a wave function, as a kind of illusory perceptual system. It's not an illusion, but it's not solid. It's transient by definition, by nature. And from there we derive a bunch of I hope the wind's not messing up. From there we derive a bunch of information, or at least a I can't think of the word right now, basically not facts, but parameters, if you will. We derive parameters about what is possible and what is likely to be happening in this situation where we really don't have the far ends of time and the far ends of space to determine where we are in, who we are, what happened far ago. We have to tie all this together and to determine what's possible and therefore what's likely and probable. And that also leads directly into causality, causal reference, and how we're kind of already in a feedback loop because we're in a cut-off bubble of reality that's just our species, our civilization, and we are creating what is happening on a collective scale. And the idea is once you tap that, just like an individual tapping that, you can control your existence in a much higher degree, a much different fashion, a much more expanded or on a different scale, okay? And so when our collective mind, our society understands that and taps into that, everything changes from there. And that's the basic idea behind all of it. But we're not really there yet because we kind of got to work out all the kinks. But you can also kind of work them out on the way. It's just really, really intense to do that. And so with that advanced technology and the electrogravitics, the electromagnetics, the soul, the mind link, the scalar technology, free energy, what's called free energy, into replication tech, into portal tech, into time tech, where you can basically lens time in what we call space, and it's all relative to consciousness, even space and distance itself. And basically, the easiest way to get over that hurdle, and this is what I do in the bases a lot, like, so come up with something crazy that you've seen in a Marvel, comic book, which they invented. Just come up with something. It's like, they can do that. That's what they'll say. They'll say, we can do that. We did that long ago. Try again. And you can't come up with something that they didn't already do, that they didn't already figure out. It's really weird, but that's what it is. And it's because the universe is complex, but as well it's consciousness dependent. So if you can imagine it, that's the whole point. Why wouldn't it be able to, someone be able to bring that into a reality? Your mind is actually imagining something in reality. That's the point. What you imagine is connected to something that exists. How else would you be able to imagine it if the program, in a way, you're running here is connected to and can only be what is enabled and allowed out here? And in order to create that, sure, you might not be in the direct environment where that is possible. You might have to manipulate magnetic fields, things like that, to change the environment. But if you can imagine it, well, why couldn't there be an environment somewhere, some way that could enable that? And then why couldn't you enable that in this environment using more complicated technology, basically? And it's really not too complicated. All the computer systems to guide all these systems, to control the magnetic fields, to make sure stuff goes right and just like rip apart, that's complicated. Because everything has to be monitored and fed back into itself, otherwise things kind of go haywire, and a lot of it is operated through mind, and so people have to be trained in order to handle these systems, otherwise it's just the wildest thing. It's like, I don't know, what if you had your soul right here and you could do anything your soul could do? You just fly anywhere, go anywhere, see anything. If you're not careful, you're going to end up flying into the sun or something. Not saying that's a bad thing, well, okay, that'd probably be a bad thing, but there's just a whole bunch of cosmological stuff coming out now where we're gonna learn about the system, the universe. And so then I'll just skip the rest of advanced technology and the connection of that, because it leads, when you see how these things are possible, okay, why, what is the universe, what are we doing here, what is really going on? And that's basically phase 3. It's all about that. It's about what really happened with these projects, what did they influence, what did they change about this reality, what did they affect, who are we, what are the origins of humanity, what is the universe, what is the origins, what are the origins of the universe, what is the format, and basically it goes from there, from how it all works, and then that leads into cosmic intelligence, the differentiation between species, and a whole bunch of stuff that really I don't even need to talk about here, because we've just begun phase 1. Not just, but within the last year or so. And technically since around 2010, 2013 or so. And there's a whole bunch of stuff with that, as far as a treaty between basically these elite bloodlines and a loose term of the government, but it's not the government. Basically the treaty is over. The agreement is over. It's done. It ran out its time. Lucifer was in control of this world. Lucifer is in control no more. But we have to do something about that. We have to do something with it. We don't just sit here. A lot of people, it's like the goldfish, or psychological learned helplessness, like it's a Pavlovian Pavlovian result or a form of psychological. I can't think of the word. Basically, it's a term, but I can't think of what it's called. It's a psychological distortion where, like the dogs, they did an experiment. The dogs were shocked in these cages, and so then they had the cage locked, and they shocked them. This is kind of sad. They shocked them repeatedly until they stopped trying to get out, and then they opened the door and continued to do it, and they stopped trying to get out still. They didn't even care. It's a learned helplessness, or they just gave up. They didn't even care. And so it's the same with like a fly in a jar. You in there so long, you take the lid off. There's actually a bunch of flies in the jar, and you take the lid off, and only one of them flies out. All the rest of them fly up and go back down because they think the lid's still there, so they stop trying to bounce against it. Same with the goldfish in a rectangular cage where you put a clear divider in it, and you have the goldfish in there on one side. After a certain amount of time, you take the divider out, and they never cross that barrier because they think it's still there. That's learned helplessness. So people have developed learned helplessness. They don't think outside the box. They don't question authority. They don't challenge themselves. That's what they did. The idea behind the unveiling is that's what they did. They wanted to control everything. Now they realize, oh, that's not good. It's going to disrupt our future, and so everything has to be undone. Everything that went out has to come back, and we have to regain our power. And so, yeah, with phase 3, it has to do with time travel, equilibrium, consciousness, cosmic intelligence, the system of the cosmos, the universal simulation, which is an actual thing that they discovered. I'll try and explain that in a little bit on here. I'm going to run through the list. If you just listen to that and you're full, okay, well then listen to the rest of this another time, because it's going to be a whole another set of information from here. But it will explain a lot. I probably could cut these into 2 videos, but there's no need. Just pause it and watch again later. So, alright, the cloning stations, which is usually what they're called in Europe. So most memories are inserted, and this is done through the powerful supercomputing systems. A neurological clone is created of the individual. This is basically an AI-powered personality which matches, mirrors, replicates, or mimics the personality of the individual that has been neurologically cloned. Meaning your brain is scanned and put into a system, and somebody could go and interact with that system, and or a clone that has that system uploaded into it through a brain chip, and it would be just like you. There were glitches earlier on. They're mostly out now, which is a little unnerving. And so the clone is operated through that. The interaction, okay, so imagine you have a supercomputer system which can map out these real to earth, real to life, down to earth, neurological, physical simulations down to a physics model that is down to earth reality, okay, down to biological structures inside the system, and you can display that on a screen. I should have brought some water. And it will look exactly the same as, a news report. Wink, hint. Not really wink, hint, that's bad. A lot of the news is faked. And so the idea is that this interaction can be uploaded to the mind through advanced scalar technology, and the individual will have the experience of the simulated environment inside that supercomputer, where neurological clones do whatever they're doing, battle it out, just meet and talk about something, whatever it is, meet another being, whatever you want to call it. And usually the person will wake up or snap out of it wherever the person was, and instantly recall, which is basically the brain's processing, or at least the mind, of that information, and that's perceived as a near instantaneous recall of everything that has happened, kind of like it's a shock moment, like an aha moment where everything is understood. So that's basically the machine uploading the information in the form of memories, and it's kind of like snapping back to the moment or waking up to do that, because it blanks out the mind in order to get them into a state where it then synchronizes the energetic waves, the electromagnetic waves between the brain and the mind, and that is biosyncing, or through the connectome. It's basically biosyncing. I can't think of these words. I was like way in these projects, but there's a whole, I don't know, a cool bunch of words, terminology, where it's all just like second nature. So basically, don't believe everything you hear or read from people talking about this, because that could very well be what is going on. These neurological clones and these simulated environments, and then these uploads that are basically making them think that's what's happening. I'll probably run through all this really quickly. A lot of stuff out here is agenda related. That's pretty much how it goes. Really, everything here is kind of like a statement. There's mind control operation to make people think they're ruled by foreign intelligences, aka aliens. And so, because of the unique, universal, holographic nature of consciousness would make this so by bringing these possibilities into alignment with our past and then present reality. Basically, if enough people collectively believe this is what's going on, we are where we are in reality, and this basically shifts over into a past, a reality of the present where the past matches that possibility, where we kind of bring those beings into existence, because the idea is everything exists that you could possibly imagine. It's kind of creepy, it's kind of crazy, kooky, that's what it is. Where you go from there is basically, so basically this is how realities are merged and altered, aka a lot of these conspiracy theories that are coming out now. So supercomputer systems manage this information for the masses. So the idea is, what would you get if everyone was just off to believe whatever they believed? Well, you would go through so many shifts of ending up in these false realities where the past was something that we created based upon something that was either externally produced for us, or by a certain group or a certain person, or a confusion, a perceptual illusion that we just kind of rolled with and rolled into a big ball of stuff that's also a perceptual, like a psychological term. I can't think of it though. When it's like a snowball effect. I can't think of the explanation for that. But basically, you feed into something and it'll become basically real. The occult idea of that is a lie told enough, okay, becomes truth and becomes reality for the people. And so we all know who said that. I think I can't really pinpoint, but I think I know. Anyway, and so. So what would happen is that we go through a spectrum of possibilities where we have what would be called the truest true reality up at the top, if you could call it that, and that's where everybody basically sinks. All our realities go to the possibilities that we could possibly bring into possibility, and that is the one that makes the most sense. And everything between that is the realities that basically just go in any different direction that don't actually lead up to for fruition. Where, for instance, we all, say everybody believes that we, we came from a reality where we were trees or something at first. Okay, well, we could create a kind of loop of experience where we then re-experience some type of evolution from that reality or back into that reality. But if that's not, okay, the true reality, it'll have to be shifted from in order to reach true fulfillment, psychological fulfillment for the species, for the collective mind. And so the idea is, if we are creating belief, then what's the true reality? Well, there is a true reality, but it's not explained in terms of more so what we create, although it is. It's explained in terms of what is possible to be created that links us to our highest potential. So basically, what could you do? What would you do? What would happen if you created what you believed is what you created, and you could create and believe, you could believe anything? I don't know, what if we knew about this process, and what would happen then when we feed into that situation? Eventually, we would do everything that doesn't maximize our potential until we reach what does maximize our potential, and it is our highest potential. That's kind of the gist we're in right now, where we can go one way or the other, and it's more or less time to go to our maximum potential, but people have to watch others do it, because they're not really going to instantly try to do it yet. They're still happy scrounging around in these realities that are basically made up. And so supercomputer systems manage this information for the masses, because this process has been going on since the beginning of time. And that's also how, what would happen if this process was going on since the beginning of time? We'd end up in a reality where nobody knows what's going on. That's the whole point. That's where we are now. Until we remember and recall and gain self-awareness, and we create a causal feedback loop of self-awareness, and then self-awareness expands. That's kind of the idea. We go from lower awareness into self-awareness, and then every reality that has lower awareness, where it could be anything, whatever you want to put as a placeholder here for why we're here, or who's the boogeyman, what's controlling things, whatever it is, until we get to the reality where we're in control, we have responsibility something related to that is what caused us to come here, etc., and so on and so forth. And at that point, though, once you get to that one, how are you going to go back to the other ones? If you're in the other ones, well, that means you could shift from reality, time to time, past events to past events until you go wherever you want to go, which is kind of what we've been doing. Once you get to the high reality where you're in control, you'd have to drop out of that again to get back to the loophole of not really having that creative power. So that's the idea. Highest potential or not potential, and the lower potential kind of slinks around in multiple kind of side realities, whereas there's a true reality, if you will, and it's the one where we have the potential to create, and we're aware of it, and we know it, and we use it and apply it, and it induces more self-awareness through that and for us. And so supercomputer systems manage that. This is part of a process, kind of the benefit of the doubt here, but it's real because I've seen what goes on. Okay, I've seen what happens when you put 5 people in a room, shield everything with an electromagnetic bubble, and let them have at it and create the reality. It gets crazy unless people know what they're doing. Because also, as soon as you shield it off, well, time goes into infinity. You could end that bubble, pop it, and they could have had a year worth of time in there. Okay, so it's really weird, but that's the universe. And so that's part of an attempt to mitigate chaotic reality disturbances, meaning basically people will all believe something different, so then only their common fears become the unified reality, and they fight each other through this disparity of collective reality. Meaning nobody agrees on the highest potential, so the only thing that actually they have in common or to relate to each other with is their fears of what they don't want to happen, meaning that's the collective reality that is the strongest. That's the one that is brought into existence the most. So that's kind of how that works in a duality between that, which is about self-control or lack of self-control. And it's about fear or self-responsibility, awareness, compassion, but these are called kind of like various terms, pretty much appreciation. It's either fear and ignorance, or knowledge, self-awareness, and appreciation. That are the two forces of the universe that are going to create one or the other. Because again, that's the point. There's either an ultimate fear, ignorant, automated reality, or there's an ultimate self-aware, compassionate, love-based, if you will, what do I say? Appreciative, if you will, based reality. I don't want to say positive, negative, because it's too. It's not just more or less. It's two different extremes, if you will. And so, but it's about awareness. There's either highest awareness or the lowest. And what the idea is that you have these ultimate realities, if it goes on forever, and then we have a spectrum swing, like a swing of time between those, and that's the sine wave of history and reality, and the ages of humanity, which is also what this is kind of called in an extended version of the unveiling of the hidden knowledge of the ages of humanity, and the secret space program, advanced technology, and corruption behind closed doors, blah blah. Yeah, the soul, and it all ties together. The soul holds the blueprint for all possible realities, meaning that existence of who you are at that highest possible reality where you did everything, you saw it all, you went from the lowest to the highest, and you know everything, and you're in the most self-aware state. That's your soul. Your soul is the tether to that reality here now. That's your connection to that reality, is your soul. And so that's pretty much the kind of complicated part of this, but that's the idea. The soul holds the memory of all the collective experiences. The physical body only holds the memory of one base or causal reference reality, meaning you're only aware of this one timeline, this one reality. However, hopefully that'll hold. And but the soul that is, you're connected to has connection to beyond that, because it's connected to your DNA, and it's connected to the latent possibilities, the latent information in your DNA, and the inherent capacity for your DNA to enable light transference on a transdimensional scale, meaning it's basically beyond the boundaries of this universe. And it's the geometry in that, and the way there are so many waves, just like the brain, of all this happening, and that happen in a specific pattern, in a specific angle, that activates the most coherent and the most compounded or extensive abstraction of multiple layers that you can get. Where if you throw one alignment off, you remove one layer, whatever it is, it gets less complex, less organized, and there's less information possibly of being contained within that. When you have it all balanced and everything activated the right way, you have such a magnificent, powerful, basically complex, amount of information there that it matches the entire universe. And when it does that, you can jump from universe to universe consciously, basically, which is the big whoop as well. I don't know why I keep using that word. Maybe I do, but I don't. So each moment is a closed time-like curve. The universe is one larger closed time-like curve. This one's really confusing. It's going to come out more. It's how everything pretty much works with these systems. We're basically in a bunch of causal loops. In order to get to the beginning, you kind of have to go to the past. Doesn't really make sense, but more on that to come. The media is used to guide the subconscious and thus guide the Earthship through dimensional space or possible futures. Because the electromagnetic field around the Earth, or around whichever way you want to look at it, we're in a realm. That's not what it is. It's a dimensional realm. It's one flat layer of a multidimensional realm, or a multidimensional spectrum of realms, and so that shield is like your aura, and so it's gonna, when your mind is enhanced in a certain way in regards to your aura, and you're basically pointing in a certain way like a compass needle in this electromagnetic spectrum of desiring or attracting certain realities, okay, you're attracting experiences. So the entire Earth and the entire collective mind and the morphogenic field, which is pretty much what that is doing the same thing, and it's pointing where we are going to go as a species. And it's, again, a collective overall result, although individuals do have that power, and those are the spiritual leaders of the past, basically, and as well the people who are targeted in these programs that have the most power to enhance or degrade the field or code it in one way or another. And that's why these people were targeted, because their goal is to use this whole process, this knowledge, to target the field, to control the field. And it's all leading up somewhere. Basically, it's making a distinction point where the past is just covered in all the corruption, and then the future that we get to, once we cross this wave barrier, this wave front, if you will, the crashing of that singularity of the probabilities, we get to a time of peace. Okay, it's a time of where all the corruption is therefore behind us. This kind of has to do with the something MK said, which is basically the 1776. They made a decision to usher in the age of peace, the golden age. Well, the idea is, it's like when you push your hand through water, what happens? You have a high pressure zone up front that's pushing everything, and then you have a low pressure zone behind you where it's pulling everything. So because this is a hand of golden age, and they marked it into time, stamped it, and put it there using this mind magic, if you will, and all this complicated understanding of the nature of reality, and they pushed that into history. And at first it was just a little bump, a little hump, if you will. But by the time it got all the way up through history into where it is now, there was such a golden age in front of, 20, whatever year it's going to be, could be in a few years now, that behind that, because there was such a contrast of something good in front of that, directly behind that, there was a contrast of that goodness, and that's absolute darkness and corruption. And that's basically how they created it, but they also created the opposite of it. So it's just kind of how it goes. But the idea is the media knows that the collective mind is doing, it's not the media, but the people who control that. They know the media, they know the people, the mind does that, and so they use the media, that's Mockingbird, they use the media to control and influence the mind, and they literally guide the Earthship into which possible parallel reality, or however you want to look at it, which possible future that it's going to go into. That's literally what that is. And again, these supercomputer systems map everything out. Excuse me if I'm speaking fast and trying to run through this. You can do it, you can put it on a slow speed setting, or fast if you're feeling wild. And so the cloning stations moved or shut down somewhere near 2010, or a few years prior to this in Earth reality. This is what I was informed. I can't tell, but this is what it seemed. The bases don't really even hold the cloning stations. They're in an artificial time bubble in an alternate dimension. That's how it works. So that nobody could bomb them if they were there. And so the cleaning out of the bases is kind of arbitrary. It's pretty much for show. That's kind of what that was decided to be done. However, some of it is not, and that's part of why that's happening now. However, that enters into a causal reference of this reality that something is happening, and that could go either way. That there's something happening and we're going to win. Or they could use that, because all program code from that point of view, that something is happening, and because of this, we know that something bad was there that caused this something happening, like that wave front where you have the contrast of before and after, and so something bad could happen because of that. The whole idea was to just not have any awareness of what's going on, and it just be fixed, and then we kind of get to a point where we can have this acknowledgement by ushering the new age. But we got to do what we got to do, basically. Antarctica is a nexus point for multiple realities. That's pretty much how it works. There are energetic vortex points. These vortex points create the same, like a a congruent fluctuation, like a, I don't even think that's a word that I'm trying to think of right here. And confluence, I don't think that's a word. It's like a mixing of those geometrical patterns in a vortex form, vortex math, which compresses down into a infinitesimally small spiral, which goes into a point of singularity, and that point is present in all of the realities. That single point is present in whatever one. You go into there and you tune yourself to a certain frequency, you tune your devices to a certain frequency, you end up in whatever reality you want to. So there are points like that all over the planet, and Antarctica is one of the most powerful ones. You know, besides the fact of it is potentially a magnetic null point, null zone, having to do with something about a magnetic center and the flat Earth and all that stuff. And so there are underground generator systems that act as powerful scalar mind links and initiate control of the Earthship. So not only is a collective mind doing this, there are generators that do this for people, map everything out, and these are apparently, we invented a lot of them, and as you know, the secret societies did, not like me, although shoot, they did calibrate us for a few of them. And so basically, but they found, here's the weird stuff, kind of goes into my last video, they found these generators, these computer systems already built. They just found them. So somebody was here before. It's basically the last harmonic layer, not really the harmonic layer, but the last time layer of civilization where this was all going on, this was all already known, and people were all already here. So that's the big whoop of Phase 3 as well. Ancient history is not what we've been told. It has all been done before, and we've been here for millions of years. And the technology part of it was found, and although a lot of the wars, if not all the wars, were either to suppress people from finding the truth, or to find more technology, or related to somebody getting this technology and going kind of haywire with it, or just trying to do whatever they want to do. And so there's hidden life, there's hidden viruses and dangers in the area. This is apparently where the virus is released from, and it's due to be released and begin the infection for this timeline. Take that as you will. You take it as you will, prepare, and fear is food, so, you know, do what you will. I'm not afraid. I mean, shoot, you should be ready by now. What are you waiting for? You know, something, the same thing that's been happening to happen. We've been in a time loop here. It's been happening like that for a while. Our souls are basically going to find liberation through this. Everything up to now was practice, or more so bleed-throughs from other periods due to the operation of trans-dimensional interactions which introduce factors that would only be present in the invasion timeline. Basically, stuff they did was them branching from a timeline where kind of stuff already went haywire because of what they did, and that introduced, it causally bled through and introduced those factors of that timeline so that we were going to merge with it, and it's basically referenced as the introduction of the invasion timeline. The way it works is really confusing, but basically this is seen as the projects as the introduction of the invasion timeline, which essentially refers to how these are possible, probable timelines that have not yet occurred but are being introduced into this reality and thus changing the future and the past. It's pretty much the best way to say it. It's as if we have reality of belief, okay, and so what happens when belief-based reality, what happens when you jump from another area where somebody came out like a mind magician and said to everybody, reality is going to be this way because these are the parameters for it, and they insert it into reality, and then from that point on, forward and backwards in the time, everything changes. Okay, well, what happened to the timeline, and how do you reference and say, well, in another time, things were differently, and then at a certain point, this happened, and everything changes. So it's basically we have multiple layers of timelines, and we're not only moving a long time this way, we're moving sideways, if you will, or diagonally in different areas, and so the way that we would jump from one way to another, that would be called the introduction of a new timeline. And so then you got to imagine, not only is this manufactured, but it's kind of manufactured, it's mapped out and recorded. You have systems and people that are mapping things out this way as well, and then as well you get this way and that way, and there's all these different dimensions of possibilities and changes that occur that have to be mapped out and recorded. Otherwise we would just be in a big labyrinth and we would forget who we are, and where we came from and what went on, which is not what anybody wants. So belief is related to that system that, or the theory that we're in a belief caused reality, or a belief sourced causal reality, meaning what you believe is possible, you give causal reference or link into being possible, and you draw the possibilities of those experiences into your actual experience, into your life. So the idea is, what happens when people maximize this potential, and now you believe that it's possible. Okay, what happens when you believe more is possible because you're believing, and it goes and goes and goes. Eventually you get an equilibrium or a nexus of possibilities where so much is possible. The only way to describe where we're at and what we're doing is that there's a system that is making this all possible. Now the camera itself is swinging. That there's a system, there's a system that's making this all possible, okay? And it is before or ahead of us in time. Meaning, but at the end of time, imagine you went so far and so long by imagining and building up more and more power. The idea is to build up power and self-awareness, that the only way to explain where you would be if you continue to do that is that you'd be in a state of near omnipresence and omniscience and omnipotence, where you could do anything your mind imagined. So at the end, every individual that is capable of doing this and activating their soul and just wants to will basically become a kind of center of reality. The idea is that because it's possible, it means that it already exists. It's out there. It's already there. It's a triangulated tip of the realities when you stop going sideways one or the other and kind of inching along, but begin doing these leaps and jumps and compressing them down to the one that's the most powerful reality you can imagine. And it equals that there's basically supercomputers at the end of time that map out reality backwards based upon how quickly and how coherently we can access the power of those systems in those realities. And so it's like saying all you have to do is imagine that it's possible and that it is basically going to take place and it's ready. This is kind of what me and Emily Moyer and Randy Moggins were talking about in this deleted lost file. But when you can imagine that and bring that power to it, it's not that you have to really manifest it. It becomes like a video game there where it already exists. All you do is imagine that in some reality you did the proper moves and this, that, and the other, and you did the work and manifested it. You'll connect with that reality on a side parallel, but they both meet up to that reality, and you can actually pull the energy from that future point in time where the two realities meet, and it comes backwards to you. So Trick, Secret Society has been holding that forever. That's what it is. And so basically it goes back to that it all meets the power through that, and then we look into where we came from, the origins, and it breaks down to a contrast between the two polarities of types of people, the two polarities of the source of the universe, where one is basically that fear-based lack of awareness and automation, lack of self-awareness actually, and automation, or a love-based more or less appreciation, compassion, self-awareness, and free will. That was the other thing I forgot to say before. It's the free will behind that universe. And so there's two causes, there's two types of universe that are superimposed over one another. And you have the ultimate version of one and the ultimate version of the other, and they link in the end, in the future, or the beginning and the end, but in the meat of the story, if you will, it's like this kind of labyrinth where they go in 1,000 different ways. And so, when I first went public, I was playing into some agendas, fear-based agendas, by not saying all of this because I didn't want to overwhelm the people that were already out here talking. And I wouldn't want them to just be overwhelmed and not know how to deal with it. They were too comfortable. That's not fair for others. A lot of people aren't going in a way, they're not going as fast as they could be going, okay? I'm not, ragging on them. Half the people, most people, literally 99.99% of the people are ready to go faster and want to go faster. So that's just how it is. But before I made the mistake, I was like, let me do this slowly, let me not hurt anybody's feelings, let me basically give people the benefit of the doubt for what they're doing, their attitudes and things like that. That is not necessary. That was an agenda. I was playing into basically people playing with my emotions. I was thinking, they could use it. They're not using it. So the control. Okay, so anyone taking people's power is being deceptive in one way or another. It's control of the causal reference of reality that I described before, and that takes away people's true power to choose. If you can't choose, if you don't have the power to choose, then for whatever reason that happened, if whoever took that power from you, that is a deception. That is a mind control agenda. Look at the quality of information. Basically, if it's fear-based, if it's panic-based, if it is ushering you and urging you to give that power away, basically, it's kind of like an energy vampire system. If it's starting drama and it's based upon talking trash about people and calling people out more than it is about talking to the people directly and giving them their point of view and helping them or assisting them in coming to the truth, then it is a deception, it is a mind control agenda. Big secret, people are the programmers. The Illuminati, all of that, the people are the programmers. All they do is put the program code into reality, and then people run off these savior programs, these psychological projections where they then project that evil or the idea, the image of evil onto one another, and they're actually hiding from what's within them, that duality game, okay? People run the programs. They just put the possibility out there for people to act this way and disrespect one another. People are the Illuminati. That's the big secret. There's no such thing because people are the ones doing it. So then, all right, the last thing, oh shit, it's not even the last thing. One of the last things on that side of the list is that this all connects to time travel, trauma-based mind control, and celebrity cloning. Basically, the basis, I wonder if anybody's out there in the woods like listening to me like, what the fuck? So, the time travel, it's on YouTube. So basically, one of the main effects of time travel is traumatization. It's like the energy systems can't handle it, the mind fractures, it can't handle it. That's part of how the trauma-based mind control connects into it. Not given the benefit of the doubt here, that's literally one of the reasons for trauma-based mind control. The people who don't go through these systems and experience time travel go undeniably, permanently, absolutely insane, okay? It's just how it works. The cloning centers, they moved or were always interdimensional. That's how it works. It's a setup to take violence, to take a violent standpoint in this system that enables, through that causal reference I just explained, that enables the same response onto the people, even if it's in the mind and it's just a violent, disrespectful, disharmonic, discordian outlook that enables that to be fed back to us. It's like a rule, a law. You know, people have to open themselves up for it. Using violence enables that. It's kind of like a form of magic. It's also a spiritual charge, and it's causal hijacking through mind manipulation and psychological imbalance, meaning people can actually pull charge from that. Imagine, I just did a post on this earlier, okay, somebody going around being a bully. What is that? An emotional bully, not actually no contact. Okay, somebody can get attention and power by bullying others. So that's like an energy vampirism. So what is it when people basically, I connected that to something else where it's like, so what is it when people are feeling good around others in a way, but they're doing it kind of in their own way where they're taking attention and it's kind of selfish. It's the same thing as bullying and energy vampirism. They're just silently taking the charge from people, and it's done that way to convince them that they basically have a savior syndrome, and that's the basis of religion. But that psychological imbalance, that hijacking reality, mind manipulation, the reality of the soul, how it all works, electromagnetic charge, that's all related in Gnosis and the Gnostic texts and the occult knowledge. And basically, how one is either motivated by fear and lust or desire, or knowledge, wholeness, free will, and appreciation. Basically, those are the charges of the systems, and fulfillment is reached through wholeness, at least for the people who choose that. And some say that it can be done through fear as well, and the other way. But you know, because that's just that they're two extremes, and therefore fundamental charges, if you will, of the universe. So there's two kind of systems going on there. I think in the end they kind of all nullify back into a neutral, peaceful version, if you will. And so doing that though, these mind control agendas, these vampires, all that stuff, it's a form of spiritual attack. That's what that is. It's based upon the ego, the reptilian brain, which connects the hippocampus and the memory, and harmony as well. This is the free will, appreciation, all that. It's the other side of that. It's harmonic versus disharmony. But the reptilian brain, the hippocampus and memory, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, the limbic system, cross brain chatter, the higher and lower brains, the R complex, the brainstem, the spine. That's basically the difference between fear-based reality or wholeness, harmony, free will-based reality. The lower brain, reactory, animalistic, has no ability to choose. The higher brain can choose. And as well, it's not really the higher brain, it's the soul, the electromagnetic spectrum that operates around the brain and actually skips the brain. It's faster than the brain can't keep up. And so people who really aren't saying what's happening is because they're either hiding or they don't know. Either option is a form of hiding and an agenda, because having the ego to come, to do this lot of stuff, but not to admit that we don't really know everything. Nobody does. I'll be the first to admit it, that there's agendas everywhere, and no one has the full picture because nobody can. And I'd rather not, because my brain would explode. It already almost exploded to know what I know now. And so, but I do know about what I know about, and so I can say that. How this information was, developed over time, and the experiments and operations, stuff like that. And so knowledge is the foundation of the soul, and knowledge and compassion. And so the basic idea, I think that's it. We did it. The basic idea is that these people who have been running these projects, if they go towards compassion now, they believe that it might kill them. Not only they believe that people will be mad at them, but they believe that it might kill them to return back to compassion, to bring that charge back down, and to get the BS from all the people that they took energy from and have that given back to those people. So part of what I was doing, and I still do, is to try and balance this out, bridge one to the other, neutralize the situation, basically bring the species together, bring the civilization together. And I know it's a shit show, excuse my language, first one for today. But basically, some believe that they have to live off of people, in a way eating them, and as well, you know, there's a physical version of that, but it's not the same. It's like a mind thing that the two can never mix, and the one civilization basically must fall for the other one to prosper. But I think there's a possibility, there's a reality, there's a whatever you want to call it, timeline, where it's possible that there's a unification of realms, or the fact that one reality is free of collusion and interference by the other group's reality, things like that, and they kind of separate. Whatever happens, okay, there's a way for both to survive, and that's kind of what I'm looking forward to, looking for. And although that doesn't mean like beings that aren't supposed to be here, that can't mix with people, are supposed to come and like sit down and have coffee. That's not the situation. The reality is expanse. You can do anything. So, I mean, technically you can do anything, but that would be, we'll see if that's what's going to be. I don't think that's what's going to be. Because you can do everything, and you can imagine anything, well, there are beings that just do not mix. That humans and these beings don't mix, and that's how it works. And so, you know, but I do think there's going to be a beneficial outcome for humanity, really for humanity. Because the idea of two that can't mix, well, the beneficial outcome for another one might be to eat people. So it's like, you know, but the idea is that it doesn't have to be a complete outright destruction. For instance, we can basically separate and clear the realm, and those beings go to their home realm, and people either go to their home realm, or this is our home realm, and we claim it, make it sovereign, and clear it. Alright, that was a talk. I ran through the last part. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope this came out. I'll probably spend a lot of time doing audio. Maybe I'll ask Joseph Rancier for some audio help. He helped out with that one video a lot. 40 mile an hour winds. Nice stuff. Alright, thank you.